In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to crochet the classic magic pot holder, a favorite in the crochet world for decades. What makes this project so special is how it magically folds in on itself to create a double thick square, perfect for using with hot pans and as a trivet. I'm going to be showing you a no-sew version where we crochet a beautiful flat seam that is part of the project. But if you find that too fiddly, I'll show you how to do a very simple whip stitch that will also give you a beautiful flat join. And one of the best things about this pattern is how easy it is to resize. Once you make one of these, you're going to want to make more. They're fast, useful, and super giftable. For this demonstration, I'm going to be using a weight 4 cotton yarn with a 4mm hook. The recommended hook size for this yarn is actually a 5mm, but I do prefer the density of the stitches when I use a 4mm. So if you do want this to work up a little bit more quickly, I'd recommend that you go up to a 5mm. Regardless of the hook size, I do recommend that you stick with a cotton yarn. This is because it is heat resistant and withstands hot temperatures. If you're using a different hook and yarn or you're wanting to do a different size pot holder, then you want to create a chain that is twice the length of the size of pot holder that you're making. So for example, I'm doing one that is 6 by 6 inches. So this needs to be about 12 inches long. And like I'm doing here, stretch out your chain to reach, because once you put stitches into your chains, it is going to expand. So you want to stretch it out like this to get more accurate. For another example, if you wanted to do a pot holder that is 8 by 8 inches, then you would want your chain to be 16 inches. Adding a slip knot to my hook. Again, I'm working with a 4mm hook here. To create your chain, you're going to be using an odd number. For this pot holder, I'm using a chain of 41. To create our first round, we're actually going to be working into both sides of the chain. And then after that, we're just going to do round after round after round until our rectangle turns into a square. It is so, so cool. What I highly recommend you do for this very first round is work into the back stitch of our chains. If you look here, it just looks like little bumps in the back, and you're just going to count them just like you would the front of the chain. So here's our first chain here. There's the back bump or leg on the very back. So starting in the second chain from the hook is the second bump from the hook. 1, 2. We're going to do our first single crochet. So going into that back bump, create a single crochet. And we're just going to do this all the way across, working into the back bump, single. Here at the very end, it can be a little confusing about where to put your stitch. You see here we have 2 left, so you should see 2 bumps. 1, 2. See how beautiful that looks when you work into the back? Now we're still on round 1, but now we're going to be working the other side, and we're going to immediately start working into the back loop only. This is what gives this beautiful ridged effect to your pot holder. So to continue on and work into the back loop only, here's the top. Here are your V's. You're going to be working into the back of the V. And we're just placing single crochets into it. So right there, immediately into that back loop only, single crochet. And then just in every back loop, all the way across. Two stitches left. And that's your very first row completed, or round. Let's call it rounds because we are going to be working in rounds. To continue on, we're not doing any kind of increases. We're just going to repeat what we just did, working into the back loop only. So here we go. Just turning around. There's my back loop. Creating my stitch. And if you do want to keep a record of how many rounds you're doing, you can go ahead and add a stitch marker. Be very careful not to add an extra stitch here. As you can see, it pulled. This is my stitch. I'm going to go right into the next one. And then continue on, just back loop only, and it is going to curl in on itself. Okay, and you can see we're coming around our corner here, and we're just working into those back loops. No increasing, just go right into that back loop. Boom. Boom, and continue along the other side. Coming to the end of the round, I replaced the stitch marker with some yarn because it was just too noisy. And speaking of stitch markers, it's really not necessary to have one unless you really want to know how many rounds you're creating. That would be important if you want to create maybe a stripe effect with different colors of yarn, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. And so we're just going to repeat what we've been doing. We're just going to do this round after round after round, working into the back loop only. And just watch the magic take place. You can already see that it's starting to curl in on itself. You want it to do that. The only thing I do recommend as it starts doing this is just do it the other way. You want your tail to stay on the inside. I like keeping the tail. I don't weave it in because it's a really good way to keep a tally of how many rounds you're doing. The tail is on the opposite side here, so once I've gone all the way around and the tail is still on the opposite side, that's when I know I've completed a round. When you come to the end, you should have something that looks like this. I worked about 20 rounds. To turn this into a square, we're simply going to take those sides, and push them in. And what you'll notice is now your last stitch is in the middle. So we need to continue on to the other side to officially complete the square. Just making sure I don't want to go beyond that corner. Let's see, I'm going to do 3 more stitches. Great, and now we're ready to join. Ooh, one thing I did want to mention before I forget is working with stripes. Now, I recommend for something like this to just have fun with your favorite stitch and a nice ombre or self-striping yarn. But if you do want to create your own striping, this is where having an idea of how many rows or rounds you're going to do does matter. And I did find a formula that helps with that I'm going to pop in the description box below the video. You will have to do a gauge swatch to figure it out, but again, those details are in the description box. Now, as far as how to create stripes, there is a video that I came across on YouTube that I'm going to link to also in the description box because it was really helpful. And since I'm not going to be doing that in this video today, I recommend that you check that out. So let's continue on. I want to show you the no-sew option for joining this together. What we're going to be doing is called the flat top slip stitch join. Now, it's not hard to do, but it can be a little bit fiddly. So after I show how to do this, I'll show you a really easy way to join it together with a whip stitch. But I think you're going to love this no-sew option once you get the hang of it. If you've ever tried the zigzag join for joining squares together, it's very similar to that. And if you've never heard of that, I'd recommend that you watch the video that I'm going to place up here in the top corner. It is a beautiful and unique way to join your squares together. And actually, you could even use it here if you want for a more decorative join. Basically, all we're going to do here is we're going to take our hook and go through the inside loop of both of these stitches and do a slip stitch with them. Okay, here's my active yarn. I'm going into one side, going over, make sure that the active yarn is underneath, going to the other side, pull the yarn through, and do it however it's most comfortable for you through all 3 loops. Okay, going into the stitch, grabbing the inside loop onto your hook, making sure the active yarn is underneath, inside loop on the other side. You essentially have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Now this is a bit fiddly because I have it sitting flat on the table for you to see, but when you're working on it at home, just get into whatever position works best for you. I just want you to really be able to see what's going on here. So into that stitch on both sides, pull through. That seems to be working. In, pull through. Look at that, that's gorgeous, isn't it? I just love that. The key to this is making sure that the active yarn stays under your stitch. If you keep it above and you do it, then you're going to get a ridge. And once you get the hang of it, it'll be a lot smoother and a lot easier to do. Try not to be too tight with this. You don't want your work to pucker. Okay, this won't be very easy to see doing on camera, so just bear with me here. Just getting this little corner here. The very last stitch is near impossible to do. Looks like it's going to be a little too tough. So I'm not even going to worry with that. I'm not going to stress about it. I'm just going to do a normal slip stitch there with the yarn over the top of it. Doesn't matter at this point. And that's all there is to it. At this point, if you want to add a little hanger, you can, or you can just fasten off. Let's go ahead and make a quick hanger. Let's do a chain of 10. And then just in the same area where we started, I'm going to go in, do about 3 loops there, just make it nice and firm. Create a slip stitch to connect. If you don't like the size of that, then just play around with chains until you get the size that you like, okay? And then I'm going to fasten off. I'm going to thread the yarn through that loop. To help tighten it. And then with a tapestry needle, I'm just going to weave that tail in. Beautiful, I absolutely love that. Now, just in case you don't like to do that flat top slip stitch, you can just do a whip stitch instead. What I would recommend you do here, if you do want to have a hanger before you fasten off and snip your yarn, which I didn't do here, I totally forgot. Don't be like me. Create your chain. Do all of your crocheting while you can before you cut your yarn. Before you snip your yarn, make at least 2 to 3 lengths of yarn to make sure you have plenty for sewing in. So when I say that, I just mean going across 1, 2, 3. You probably only need about 2 1/4, 2 1/2. To do a whip stitch, we're just going to enter under both loops on one side and then the other. Pull the yarn through. And now we're just going to repeat that all the way down. Loops, under these loops, and tighten. This color's a little dark, sorry about that, but I think you get the idea. And there, it's not really a true couple of stitches, but just want to make sure that corner's covered. And then just the same thing, just go into the inside. If you had a ton of yarn left, you could create your chain with that if you like. If you forget like I did. Another option would be the mattress stitch, but for now, for ease, I would just recommend, if you don't want to do the crochet version, just a lovely little whip stitch will do. Once you get really comfortable with this, that's when you can kind of branch out and explore different things. A moss stitch would be really lovely with this. A Suzette stitch would be perfect for this. Any kind of one row repeat would be great for this. And speaking of that, if you'd like to learn how to make those stitches, I do have videos that show how to do that, which I'll pop right here. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, a like is always appreciated. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.